There is a certain kind of person who fills every silence with a scroll, every pause with a notification, every empty room with noise. Not because they love distraction, but because the moment everything stops, something terrifying begins. The voice, the one that whispers when no one else is around. You are alone, you are invisible, you might always be. Here is what most people never realize. The fear of being alone is not about being alone. It's about the anticipation of being alone. It is about what surfaces in the silence, the thoughts you have been running from, the questions you refuse to answer, the version of yourself you have never met. And by the end of this video, you will understand not only why this fear controls so many lives, but how to transform it from your greatest weakness into your deepest source of strength. Have you ever noticed how even in a crowded room, surrounded by voices and movement and laughter, you can feel utterly invisible? Like everyone, we move through life, talking, connecting, and living, and somehow you are suspended in a silence that is not really there. That, my friend, is the subtle whisper of the fear of being alone. It does not announce itself with fireworks or alarms. It creeps in through the quiet moments. The pause between conversations, the fading laughter at the end of the day, the soft glow of your phone when no one has messaged. And yet it is one of the most universal experiences of the human mind, something that touches almost every heart at some point in life. This fear is not just about physical solitude, it runs far deeper than an empty room. Psychologists call it autophobia, sometimes monophobia. The fear of being isolated, disconnected, or simply by oneself. But this fear is more than a clinical label. It reflects how our brains are wired for connection. Human beings are inherently social creatures. Evolution crafted us to thrive in groups, to find safety, meaning, and identity through connection with others. Being alone triggers an ancient alarm system inside us. A biological reminder that separation once meant vulnerability, that isolation once meant danger. And even though the world has changed, that old neural wiring has not. It still whispers softly, persistently. You are vulnerable, you are exposed, you are not enough on your own. And yet here is the paradox that changes everything. Some of the most profound growth, creativity, and insight in human history emerged from solitude. Think of the artists, the thinkers, the philosophers, the poets. Leonardo da Vinci, Virginia Woolf, Nikola Tesla. They all had moments when they were alone, confronting themselves in the quiet, discovering truths that the noise of society could never reveal. Albert Einstein famously said, "I live in that solitude which is painful in youth, but delicious in the years of maturity." There is a delicate tension here. The very thing we fear, the quiet, the emptiness, the absence of distraction, can also be the portal to our deepest understanding of self. But why does it feel so unbearable at times? Why does being alone make us fidget, scroll endlessly on our phones, or fill silence with meaningless noise? Research from the University of Chicago and UCLA suggests something fascinating. When people are alone with their thoughts, they often encounter themselves more honestly than they might in any social setting. The mind starts asking questions we usually ignore. Who am I really? What do I want from this life? Am I truly happy? And for many people, the answers are uncomfortable. Being alone does not just reveal absence, it also reveals presence. It reveals the truth, and truth can be terrifying. Here is something that most people discover only after years of running from themselves. When you shut everything off, when you put down the phone, turn off the television, sit in complete silence, something happens. It comes in two waves. The first wave is panic. Within minutes, sometimes seconds, the mind begins to race. You feel the urge to reach for your phone, to check something, anything, to distract yourself from the discomfort rising in your chest. This is what most people flee from. This is where most people give up. But those who stay, those who sit with the panic without fleeing, discover something remarkable. The second wave is clarity. After the storm of anxiety passes, after the mind stops screaming for stimulation, something quieter emerges. A stillness, a presence, a connection to yourself that no external relationship can provide. The tragedy is that most people never reach the second wave. They spend their entire lives running from the first. If you have ever wondered why you keep reaching for your phone, why you struggle to sit in silence, or why being alone feels like suffocation, now you know. Your scrolling habit is fear management, masquerading as connection. This is worth understanding deeply. Every time you reach for your phone in a quiet moment, you are not seeking connection. You are seeking escape. The algorithm knows this. Social media platforms are designed to exploit this fear. They promise connection but deliver distraction. And the tragic result is this. The more you scroll, the more disconnected you become, not just from others, but from yourself. Consider the way this plays out in modern life. We wake up and immediately check our phones. We eat meals while scrolling. We fall asleep to screens. Every moment of potential silence is filled with digital noise. And we tell ourselves this is a connection, but it is the opposite. Real connection requires presence. Presence requires the ability to be alone with your thoughts, and that ability is being systematically destroyed by our devices. So let me ask you this. When panic strikes, what is your plan for staying in the room long enough to reach clarity? Type 1 in the comments if you usually flee. Type 2 if you have learned to stay. Now here is something that will shift your entire understanding of this fear. The loneliest place on earth is not an empty room. It is being surrounded by people who make you feel alone. One of the most painful truths hidden in human psychology is this. Many people confuse being alone with loneliness, but they are not the same thing. Loneliness is a social emotion, a sense of disconnection from others, a feeling that no one truly sees you, understands you, or cares. Solitude is simply a physical state, being without company. One can be alone and deeply fulfilled. One can be surrounded by people and profoundly lonely. The fear of being alone often confuses these two experiences. We believe that being alone can leave us feeling incomplete, but often what we are truly missing is a sense of connection with ourselves. Think about this carefully. Many people stay in relationships that drain them, in friendships that exhaust them, in jobs that diminish them, all to avoid being alone. They fear solitude so much that they accept loneliness as the price of company. But here is the devastating irony. The loneliest they have ever felt was not when they were by themselves. It was when they were with the wrong people. When the person beside you makes you feel invisible, that is loneliness. When you sit in silence with yourself and finally feel seen, that is peace. There is an ancient observation that explains why this happens. The philosopher Nietzsche wrote that the lonely one offers his hand too quickly to whomever he encounters. Think about what this means. When we fear solitude, we rush into connections. We accept people who are not a good fit for us. We stay in relationships that diminish us. We tolerate treatment we do not deserve. All because the alternative, being alone with ourselves, feels unbearable. But here is what this fear costs us. When you choose the wrong company to avoid solitude, you trade temporary discomfort for prolonged suffering. You exchange a few moments of quiet for years of feeling unseen, unheard, and unloved. The bravest thing a person can do is choose solitude over the wrong connection. To say, I would rather face myself than lose myself in someone who cannot see me. Let me show you what happens inside your mind when you stop running. Neuroscientists have discovered that when people are alone, a specific set of brain regions activates. They refer to it as the default mode network. This network is responsible for self-reflection, daydreaming, imagining, and planning for the future. It is in these quiet moments that we confront patterns, evaluate choices, generate new insights. In other words, being alone is the brain's laboratory for personal growth. The very moments that scare us are often the ones that teach us the most about who we are and what we truly value. But there is another discovery that is even more fascinating. Research shows that when people are alone for extended periods, only a few days in some cases, they begin to lose their grip on reality. Not in a dramatic way, but in subtle shifts, things feel surreal. Time moves differently. The boundaries between thought and reality blur. This is why even introverts, even people who love solitude, need occasional contact with others. Not for conversation, sometimes just for the sound of life. The footsteps in another room, the reminder that reality still exists beyond the walls of the mind. Humans are wired for connection, not a constant connection, but enough to anchor us in the world. Now, let me take you even deeper. The fear of being alone is often, at its core, a fear of something else entirely. It is a fear of death. Not in the literal sense, but in the sense of impermanence, of ending, of disconnection from everything that gives life meaning. When we sit quietly, we are reminded that life is finite. Every connection eventually ends. Every relationship has a conclusion. Every laugh fades into silence. This awareness can feel overwhelming, but it also invites something powerful. Presence. When we stop running from the quiet, we begin to savor moments that might otherwise pass unnoticed. We cultivate gratitude for small, ordinary experiences, the warmth of morning light, the taste of coffee, the sound of your own breathing. In solitude, the mind becomes a microscope, revealing the hidden textures of existence, the nuances of thought, the patterns of emotion that usually go unobserved. This is not emptiness, this is depth. Here is the truth that most people never realize. Being alone is not a state to fear, it is a skill to cultivate. The mind that cannot tolerate its own company is like a body that cannot breathe. The fear of being alone is a natural feeling, but it is not permanent. It is a shadow cast by avoidance. Shine the light of attention, curiosity, and self-compassion, and the shadow retreats. Studies on emotional resilience indicate that individuals who can tolerate solitude are more self-aware, creative, and emotionally stable. They are better problem solvers, better communicators, and paradoxically, better connected to others. Because in learning to be alone, we learn to be fully present, fully alive, fully ourselves. So how do you build this skill? Start small, 5 minutes of quiet reflection, an evening walk without your phone. Journaling your thoughts without expectation. Over time, the mind begins to see solitude not as a threat, but as a resource. Curiosity replaces fear, reflection replaces anxiety, presence replaces panic. Another powerful tool is mindfulness, the act of observing the present moment without judgment. Mindfulness teaches the mind that being alone is not dangerous. Thoughts, even uncomfortable ones, can be witnessed without being feared. By learning to observe rather than react, the very anxiety that fuels the fear of being alone begins to dissolve. You can also embrace creative expression. Draw, write, paint, compose music in solitude. These activities channel the energy of fear into a creative outlet. They transform the empty room from a prison into a studio. And perhaps most importantly, remind yourself of this truth every day. Solitude is not absence, it is present. Presence with self, presence with awareness, presence with life as it is, without the filter of other people's expectations. I am curious, where are you watching this from right now? Comment on your country below, United States, Australia, Philippines, Canada. Here is the profound truth that ties everything together. The most important relationship you will ever have in your life is the relationship you have with yourself. Every other connection, every friendship, every romance, every bond with family is filtered through how you relate to your own mind. If you cannot be at peace with yourself, you will search for peace in others, and you will never find it. If you cannot love yourself in silence, you will seek love in noise, and it will never be enough. The person who has faced themselves, who has sat in silence and felt fear without fleeing, carries a depth that naturally attracts authentic connection. Think of it this way. Imagine a lake. On the surface, the water may be turbulent, reflecting every disturbance, every ripple from the outside world. But only by diving beneath into the still, quiet depths can you see the clarity, the treasures, the patterns that lie below. Solitude is that dive, fear is the surface turbulence. Only by descending do we discover the unseen, the untouched, the real. The fear of being alone is not your enemy. It is a compass pointing you toward authenticity. It is a doorway leading to creativity, wisdom, and resilience. It is here in this delicate human tension between fear and presence that we find not just the self, but the possibility of something greater. Joy, meaning, freedom. So next time you feel that gnawing unease when you are alone, consider this. The fear is real, yes. But it is also a teacher. It is calling you to slow down, to breathe, to meet yourself without disguise. It is asking you to listen to the quiet, to observe the mind, to confront your truths. And when you do, when you sit with the fear without fleeing, you step into a realm of clarity, creativity, and profound self-understanding that the noise of the world can never give you. Because at the end of the day, to face solitude is to face the most human part of ourselves. And to discover, sometimes with wonder, that we are not only capable of standing alone, we are capable of standing fully alive. There is something even more profound about this journey. When you learn to be alone, you stop needing others to complete you. You stop searching for someone to fill the emptiness. You stop accepting less than you deserve. And ironically, this is when the deepest connections find you. The person who is comfortable alone attracts people who want to share in their wholeness, not people who want to exploit their emptiness. This is the paradox of solitude. The more you embrace being alone, the less alone you ultimately feel. The fear that once constrained us becomes the very catalyst for growth. The quiet moments that once terrified us become the space where we invent, reflect, and create. And in embracing solitude fully, not as punishment, but as a gift, we step into a life that is richer, deeper, and more profoundly human than we could have imagined. Solitude in all its quiet majesty is not a curse. It is not something to survive. It is something to cherish. And when we do, the fear of being alone fades. Not entirely, because fear is a natural part of being human, but enough to reveal a life that is paradoxically more connected, more meaningful, and more alive than we ever believed possible. Because the most important companion we will ever have is ourselves. And that realization is not loneliness. That is freedom.